Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where curiosity moves slowly and the universe becomes a soft conversation before sleep. Tonight, we're going to take a calm, thoughtful walk through one of the oldest and strangest questions humans have ever asked. Is reality truly what we see? Or is it something our minds are quietly painting for us, moment by moment? Before you settle in, if you enjoy these gentle explorations, I'd be grateful if you'd give this video a like, or maybe subscribe to our little corner of calm science. It helps more wandering minds find their way here. And if you'd like, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? It's always a quiet joy to imagine this circle of listeners, each in their own time zone, drifting together across the planet, the same question echoing softly between us. Now, feel free to dim the lights. Maybe you have a cup of tea cooling on the nightstand, or the hum of a fan somewhere in the room. Let your body rest, your breathing slow. Tonight's journey begins not in deep space, but right here, on your table perhaps, in something as simple as an apple. We'll start from the solid world we think we know, the weight of fruit in your hand, the colour of the room, the ticking of time, and gently slip beneath the surface into smaller and quieter layers of what real might mean. You don't have to follow every idea sharply, just let them float by like thoughts in warm water. We're not here to solve the mystery, only to feel its depth. So when you're ready, let's begin with the most ordinary thing in the world, and watch how it dissolves into wonder. Picture an apple resting quietly on a wooden table. Light from a nearby lamp settles over it, smooth and soft. You can almost feel its weight. Imagine its cool skin beneath your fingertips. You know this world, solid, steady, safe. When you press the apple, it resists. When you drop it, gravity, that invisible hand, guides it toward the floor. Everything behaves as expected. But if you could shrink yourself down, far beyond what any microscope could reveal, that comfortable solidity would begin to melt away. The red surface becomes a shifting plane of molecules, each one a tiny cluster of restless energy. Push further still, and those molecules unfold into atoms, miniature worlds with enormous space between their parts. An atom, for all its importance, is almost entirely nothing. Its nucleus, a dense speck of protons and neutrons, is like a grain of sand floating in a cathedral of emptiness. The electrons that seem to orbit it are not little marbles spinning around, as old textbooks once showed, but ghostly patterns of probability, clouds of maybe here and perhaps there. If you could stand inside one of those atoms, it would feel less like matter and more like weather, an invisible storm of chances and vibrations. What we call the edge of an apple is just a place where those invisible patterns end abruptly enough for your hand to notice. Scientists call this the quantum world, though that phrase sounds grander than it feels. It is a place where certainty dissolves, and everything, from apples to air, dances between being something and being only a possibility. In this realm, matter behaves less like a solid wall and more like music, repeating rhythms and resonances. The tiny particles that make up everything are more like notes in a cosmic chord than pebbles in a jar. Each atom, each bit of you, hums softly in the great orchestra of existence. Even the apple's redness, so ordinary, so obvious, isn't really in the apple. The fruit absorbs and reflects certain wavelengths of light, yes, but colour itself blooms only inside your mind, when light's frequencies are translated by your eyes into sensation. So, the red apple, that simple truth, is already a duet between physics and perception. The deeper you look, the more the border between out there and in here begins to fade. The apple and the mind watching it are two halves of the same performance, meeting somewhere between matter and meaning. If you keep zooming inward, The building blocks themselves, protons and neutrons, give way to smaller entities called quarks. But even these aren't tiny hard spheres. They're ripples, excitations in what physicists call quantum fields, vast invisible seas that fill all of space. Everywhere you look, what we call things are simply temporary waves in a continuous ocean of energy. The apple, your hand, even the air between them, they're all the same field, stirred in slightly different ways. Some physicists describe it like this: matter is just energy that forgot to move, and energy is matter in motion. If that sounds poetic, it's because reality at its heart seems to blend poetry and mathematics seamlessly. Think of a calm pond. Drop a pebble and ripples spread outward. The surface of the pond hasn't gained anything new, it's simply changed shape. In the same way, everything you see is the universe's surface, flexing, vibrating, rearranging itself into patterns we interpret as solid things. So when you hold an apple, you're holding a temporary knot in the fabric of reality, a small, stable pattern in a cosmic dance that has been moving since the birth of time. What feels real to us is the sum of many illusions that agree with each other. The atoms agree, the light agrees, your eyes and brain agree. Reality is a shared contract, consistent enough to build worlds upon, yet soft enough to vanish when you look too closely. And that's the strange comfort of physics. It tells us that the solid world beneath our feet is mostly empty, mostly motion, and yet somehow perfectly dependable. The universe may be woven from uncertainty, but the pattern holds. You can rest your hand on a table and trust it not to fall through. You can bite into an apple and taste something real, even if deep down it's just a vibration agreeing to pretend it's a fruit for a little while. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine all those vibrations still at play, in your body, in the apple, in the quiet air around you. Billions of tiny waves overlapping to create the simple piece of now. Perhaps that's what real truly means. Not the hardness of matter, but the harmony of motion. A momentary balance between chaos and calm. And as you breathe out, you might feel the faintest echo of that balance inside you, as if the same field that forms galaxies also hums gently beneath your ribs. Reality, it seems, begins not with things, but with rhythm. And tonight, that rhythm will guide us further inward, where physics starts to blur into perception, and the outer universe begins to mirror the one within. Imagine for a moment that you could listen to the universe instead of simply seeing it. What would it sound like? Would atoms hum? Would gravity whisper? Would there be some hidden rhythm beneath the silence of space? A cosmic heartbeat keeping everything in time? Physicists often say that the universe speaks mathematics. It's an elegant phrase, but it doesn't mean the cosmos is full of numbers drifting through space like snow. It means that everything we observe, the curve of a planet's orbit, the shimmer of light, the pulse of your own heart, follows patterns. Those patterns are the grammar of reality. When we describe energy and matter, we're really describing relationships, the ways one thing changes in response to another. It's less like cataloguing a collection of objects and more like studying the choreography of a dance. The apple from before, the table beneath it, even the air between, all of them follow rules so consistent that we can translate them into equations. But to keep things soft tonight, let's not think in symbols and formulas. Let's imagine instead that each law of physics is a verse in a song. The melody might be too deep or too vast for our ears, yet somehow we feel its presence in everything that moves. The equation often written as energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light, that famous idea from Einstein, is not so much a riddle of numbers as a poetic truth. Matter and energy are two forms of the same melody, different notes of one harmony. What we call stuff is simply light, slowed down and condensed, and light itself is matter set free, dancing faster than our senses can follow. The great insight of modern physics is that the universe doesn't have a separate score for stars, atoms, and people. There is one underlying rhythm, and everything we know, from the flutter of a leaf to the orbit of a galaxy, plays in time with it. You can feel a hint of that rhythm even now. Each breath you take is an echo of cosmic balance, expansion and contraction, giving and receiving. The same principle drives the life of stars and the beating of hearts. Some scientists, like Max Tegmark, have taken this idea further, suggesting that the universe might not only follow mathematical patterns, it might be one, not just built on numbers, but made of them. In this view, everything we experience is part of a vast equation that describes itself. It doesn't need a blackboard or a mathematician to exist. It is self-writing, self-reading, and self-aware in the simplest sense. It contains minds capable of noticing it. That can sound dizzying, but it's actually rather peaceful. If the universe is a grand calculation, then we are part of its working out. Not separate observers, but living lines of the same logic. You, the apple, the distant stars, all expressions of the same sentence written in the quiet language of order. Of course, there are other ways to imagine it. Some see reality as vibration, a cosmic orchestra. String theory, for instance, whispers that the smallest building blocks of nature might be tiny filaments of energy vibrating at different frequencies. Each note creates a different particle, and together they compose the matter we see. Whether or not that theory turns out to be true, it gives us a tender metaphor. That existence itself is a song, and every atom is a note in the symphony. Think of how a single violin string can play countless tones depending on how it's plucked. Now imagine the universe as an infinite instrument, strummed by time and tuned by gravity. Galaxies swirl, planets spin, waves lap at the shore, each part keeping tempo with the rest. The laws of physics are not commands written on stone tablets. They are harmonies that repeat through everything, holding chaos at bay just enough for beauty to appear. If you've ever watched a leaf fall and felt that its motion was somehow perfect, you've felt this harmony. The leaf doesn't know equations, yet it follows them flawlessly. A small piece of the universe remembering how to dance. Even chaos obeys rhythm. When we see clouds shifting or waves colliding, it feels random. But if you could slow it down infinitely, each twist of motion would reveal a kind of logic. Patterns folding inside patterns. Order hiding within disorder, as if the universe were improvising, but never quite losing its key. And so, we come back to a simple thought. The world around you is not made of things, but of relationships. What you touch, what you see, what you are. All woven together by invisible rules that care nothing for names or boundaries. The apple and the air are not two separate stories. They are two paragraphs in the same tale of balance. Perhaps that's why we find comfort in repetition, in music, in breath, in the swing of a pendulum. Deep down, we resonate with the structure of the cosmos because we are written in its same syntax. When you hum softly to yourself, you're echoing the vibrations of stars. When you dream, you're performing a small act of physics, patterns rearranging themselves into meaning. The more we learn, the more we realize that the universe doesn't need us to describe it in order to exist, but perhaps it needs us to notice it to become complete. Every observation adds another voice to the chorus. The scientist watching a falling apple, the artist painting a sunset, the child staring at the night sky. All are translations of the same truth into different dialects of wonder. And if you could step outside of everything for a moment, outside of space, outside of time, and listen, you might hear not silence, but a slow, steady pulse, the gentle rhythm of existence, the quiet music that keeps reality alive. That rhythm runs through you too. Every heartbeat, every blink, every thought that rises and fades, all part of the same composition. You don't have to understand the mathematics to belong to it. You already do. So as you breathe now, feel that connection. The air entering your lungs once drifted through the heart of a star. The atoms in your skin once danced in a supernova. The pattern that holds you together has been echoing across billions of years, waiting for this very breath to happen. The universe may speak mathematics, but it also speaks feeling. And sometimes the best way to understand it is simply to listen. If you were to drop that same apple again, it would fall. Simple, predictable, reassuring. For centuries, that simple act stood as a symbol of understanding. When the young Isaac Newton saw an apple descend, he didn't just see motion, he sensed a secret whisper of order behind it. He realised that the same pull that draws fruit toward the ground also holds the moon in its orbit and keeps the planets circling the sun. Newton imagined gravity as a force, an invisible string connecting everything with mass. He didn't know what it truly was, only that it behaved with perfect regularity. He gave the universe a kind of rhythm, every object pulling on every other forever. You and I, the Earth and the Sun, even two dust motes drifting in the same beam of light, all gently tug at one another, however faintly. For more than 200 years, that vision of the cosmos held strong. But then, in the early 20th century, another thinker looked at the same falling apple and wondered if the story ran deeper. Albert Einstein began to suspect that gravity might not be a pull at all, but something subtler, a bend, a curve, a change in the stage on which all matter moves. Imagine space and time not as emptiness, but as a kind of fabric. When something massive rests upon that fabric, a star, a planet, or even you, it leaves a small indentation, the way a bowling ball sinks into a soft mattress. Other objects then follow the curves in that fabric. They're not being pulled. They're simply travelling along the natural bends of reality. So, when the apple falls from the tree, it's not being yanked down by an invisible hand. It's following the curve in space-time that the Earth creates beneath it. The apple is doing what all things do, moving straight ahead through a universe that itself is gently curved. You can think of it like marbles rolling across a trampoline. Place one marble on the surface and it will stay still. Add a heavy ball to the centre and the fabric dips. Suddenly, the marble begins to spiral toward the middle. The trampoline didn't reach up to grab it. The marble simply followed the path of least resistance, the natural geometry of the dip. That is gravity, translated into softness and curve. In Einstein's new picture, mass and space are forever in conversation. Matter tells space-time how to bend, and space-time tells matter how to move. The relationship is mutual, like two dancers constantly adjusting to each other's steps. This idea, elegant and strange, reshaped everything. The universe was no longer a static grid of empty coordinates, but a living, flexible stage that responds to its actors. Even time itself bends in this dance. Near something massive, time runs more slowly, not dramatically, but measurably. A clock on a mountaintop ticks ever so slightly faster than a clock at sea level, because the pull of Earth's mass is weaker up there. For you and me, the difference is invisible, but satellites orbiting above must account for it, or our navigation systems would drift out of sync. In the grand scheme of things, even seconds stretch and shrink depending on where you stand in the cosmic fabric. That realization feels almost like a lullaby, the ticking of every clock, from your wristwatch to the heartbeat in your chest, gently adjusting itself to the rhythm of gravity. Time, it seems, is not universal. It is local, personal, shaped by the weight of the world beneath your feet. If you've ever floated in a swimming pool, you've felt a hint of it. The water holds you softly, slowing your movements, distorting sound. Everything feels thicker, slower, more peaceful. Gravity does something similar to time and light. It slows their dance when the pull is deep. Einstein's theory also revealed something more dramatic. If you pack enough mass into a small enough space, the curvature becomes so steep that not even light can climb out. This is the birth of a black hole, a region where gravity folds space and time into a closed loop. Yet even there, the equations remain graceful. Nothing breaks, it simply bends past our ability to see. But we won't rush into darkness just yet. Let's linger on something gentler, the idea that even your body is constantly conversing with gravity. You feel it pressing you into your chair, shaping your spine, influencing the growth of your bones, your sense of balance, the pull in your muscles, the weight of your breath, all guided by the same curvature that steers galaxies. The quiet curves of space-time are as intimate as your pulse. It's strange to think that you and the planet are in constant embrace. You're not sitting still upon the Earth. You're following its curve as it falls endlessly around the Sun, which in turn follows the Sun's path around the centre of our galaxy. Everything is falling, all at once, but because everything is falling together, we don't notice the motion. To exist is to be caught in a cosmic waltz, always moving, never colliding. If you step outside on a clear night and look upward, you might feel a faint sense of being anchored, not just by gravity, but by belonging. The same invisible geometry that holds the stars in place also holds you here. It's the universe's way of keeping its stories close. Einstein once wrote that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. He meant that despite the vastness and the mystery, the rules it follows are elegant and consistent enough for our small minds to grasp. Perhaps that's because we are made of the same logic we're trying to understand. The brain that wonders about gravity is itself shaped by it, its thoughts bending through curved space just as surely as light bends around a star. And yet, for all its precision, gravity still feels more like poetry than mathematics. You don't need equations to feel its presence. You sense it every time your body leans, every time your breath settles. It's a quiet companion, unseen yet utterly faithful, always pulling, always reminding you that you belong to something larger. In the stillness of night, when everything seems to hover, gravity is the invisible lullaby holding the world together. It doesn't demand attention. It simply ensures that everything has a place to fall, a place to rest. Perhaps that's the secret message inside the apple's fall. Not that we are bound by weight, but that we are gently held, that every motion from fruit to star is the universe folding its arms around itself. And in that fold, somewhere between weight and wonder, we find a curious comfort, the knowledge that we're all suspended in the same curve, part of a single, graceful descent that never truly ends. If you close your eyes for a moment, you can almost feel the weight of certainty, the comfort that apples fall, the earth spins, and the sun will rise. But when scientists began peering into the smallest corners of reality, that comfort began to flicker. Beneath Newton's order and Einstein's graceful curves, another world was waiting, one that didn't care much for certainty at all. The early 20th century brought a quiet revolution. As physicists studied the behaviour of light and atoms, they found that matter refused to behave like a neat clockwork machine. Sometimes it acted like a particle, a small solid point. Other times, it spread out like a wave, filling space with ripples. Which was it, really? The answer seemed to depend on how you looked. They called it wave-particle duality, but the phrase is far less rigid than it sounds. You can think of it as something being both rhythm and raindrop, melody and bead, at once. When no one was looking, electrons seemed to smear across space, like possibilities instead of places. The moment someone measured them, as if catching them mid-song, they froze into a single note. It was as though the universe couldn't make up its mind until we asked it a question. This is what we now call the quantum world, a realm of probabilities where things exist not as definite objects, but as clouds of potential, waiting to become real. In that world, cause and effect are not broken, but softened. The rules still exist, but they're more like probabilities in a card game than laws etched in stone. The quantum world doesn't tell us what will happen, only how likely something is to happen. Imagine tossing a coin and not having it land as heads or tails, but existing as both until you decide to look. That's the strange heart of quantum behaviour. Before observation, a particle can be here, there, or both, and after, it chooses. What forces that choice remains one of the great mysteries of physics. For some thinkers, this was deeply unsettling. For others, it was exhilarating. A discovery that reality might be more flexible, more alive than we ever imagined. To describe it, scientists developed something called the wave function, a mathematical way to hold all those probabilities together. But in our bedtime version, imagine it like this. Each particle carries its own sheet of possibilities, a shimmering map of everywhere it might be. When you interact with it, when light hits it, or you observe it, the map folds, collapsing into a single location. A decision is made, though no one quite knows by whom. At first glance, that might make it sound as if reality depends on being watched. In truth, what we call observation doesn't necessarily mean a human gaze. It means any interaction, any moment the universe measures itself, every atom observing every other, every photon bouncing off your hand. The cosmos is forever watching itself into existence. The physicist John Wheeler once described this as a participatory universe. He suggested that the act of observation isn't just something that happens inside the universe. It's part of what creates the universe's shape. Reality, in this view, is not a pre-written story, but an ongoing conversation, one that includes everything from starlight to neurons to human thought. If that sounds too abstract, picture it this way. Imagine walking across a foggy lake in winter. You can't see the next patch of ice until you step forward. Each step solidifies what's beneath you. Before you move, it's all mist and possibility. After, it becomes the path you chose. The universe might work something like that, revealing itself only as we move through it. This strange partnership between possibility and perception means that, at the deepest level, the world isn't a set of fixed objects. It's a process, a continuous unfolding. Existence doesn't stand still long enough to be pinned down. Everything is in flux, and what we call reality is the brief stillness of a wave caught mid-crest. Even stranger, particles can become entangled, linked so that what happens to one instantly affects the other, no matter the distance between them. It's as if two dice thrown on opposite sides of the universe always land on matching numbers. No signal passes between them. The connection simply is. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, a phrase that captures both the wonder and discomfort it inspires. But this isn't magic. It's the fabric of quantum mechanics, the realization that separation too might be an illusion. In some sense, the universe behaves as though it remembers everything that has ever touched. That idea stretches our imagination beyond comfort. If the building blocks of reality are linked in this invisible way, then perhaps nothing truly stands alone. Every atom in your body hums in quiet harmony with every atom that came before. Every breath you take carries the memory of stars, the whispers of clouds, the trace of every living thing that has ever existed. Quantum theory teaches us that isolation is a convenient myth. Connection is the rule. You're never separate from the field that forms you. Of course, this doesn't mean that consciousness alone makes the world real. The apple will still fall, whether you watch or not. The moon won't disappear when you close your eyes. But the truth underneath remains subtle. The universe and the observer are woven from the same thread, bound in mutual creation. Maybe that's why looking up at the stars can feel oddly intimate. When your gaze reaches them, their light, which has travelled for millions of years, reaches back. Observation becomes a reunion, a cosmic handshake across time. At this scale, even language falters. We talk of waves, particles, probabilities, yet none of those words quite fit. They're all metaphors, ways for our limited minds to touch something that resists being held. The universe at its core seems to behave like a thought, real enough to leave evidence, but always just out of reach. And so, reality begins to shimmer. It is no longer a flat surface of fact, but a moving sea of possibility, waves rising into what we call events, then fading again into potential. What we experience as solidity may be nothing more than persistence, the same pattern repeating often enough for us to trust it. If you listen closely, that uncertainty isn't frightening, it's freeing. It means the cosmos is not finished. Every moment is an act of creation, every breath a new choice in the fog. So as you rest tonight, think of the world not as a fixed sculpture, but as music still being composed. Each sound you hear, each heartbeat, each thought is part of that great composition, reality tuning itself, one probability at a time. And somewhere, deep beneath everything you know, the universe continues its quiet gamble, rolling its infinite dice, again and again, creating the pattern we call existence. Imagine for a moment that the entire cosmos is whispering in binary, not the cold language of machines, but the gentle pulse of yes and no, presence and absence, something and nothing. Every photon, every atom, every heartbeat could be one of these tiny choices. A single yes means here, a single no means gone. Together they weave the vast luminous tapestry we call existence. The physicist John Wheeler, one of the great dreamers of modern science, once suggested a simple but haunting idea: it from bit. What he meant was that everything, every particle of matter, every field, every galaxy, arises from bits of information. The universe, he said, is not built from matter but from meaning. Its foundation is not substance but questions answered. It sounds abstract, but it can be felt. Each time a photon of light touches your eye, a question is asked and answered. Did it arrive here? The moment it does, it becomes real. The cosmos, in this view, is like a vast network of interactions, each one a yes or a no, a flicker of recognition. And through billions upon billions of these decisions, reality writes itself into being. Imagine you're holding a book. The story exists because of ink and paper, but the meaning comes from how the letters connect. The universe may be similar: atoms as letters, forces as grammar, consciousness as the act of reading. The words alone aren't enough. It's the relationships, the patterns, that create the story. When Wheeler said it from bit, he wasn't picturing a cosmic computer humming somewhere in the dark. He was describing a living system, a reality that generates itself through exchange, through information flowing from one point to another. To exist is to participate in that flow. Every interaction, from a star colliding with another to a neuron firing in your brain, is a transfer of information, a message written in the invisible language of the universe. Physicists today often describe this in mathematical terms, but we can think of it more gently. The cosmos as a vast conversation with itself. Energy speaks to gravity. Particles speak to light. The Earth speaks to the moon through tides. It's not speech as we know it, but communication all the same. A universal sharing of information that never ends. Even temperature, which feels so ordinary, is part of that exchange. Heat is simply energy being passed along, an update, a whisper from one part of the universe to another saying, "Here I am, still moving." Some scientists go further, suggesting that the universe doesn't just carry information, it processes it. That it's not like a computer. It is a computer, one that computes itself into existence. Every atom is a logic gate, every interaction a calculation. But before this starts to sound mechanical, remember, we are not outside observers of this process. We are part of the computation. The act of thinking, of wondering about reality, is itself one of the universe's calculations. You can think of it as a kind of dream. The universe dreams, And inside the dream are galaxies and stars and people who wonder, am I dreaming? Each layer reflects the others, looping endlessly, feeding back into itself. The cosmos becomes self-aware not through intention, but through pattern, a vast recursive thought thinking itself. If this feels too strange, let's ground it in something familiar. Music. When you play a note on a piano, the sound vibrates through the air, bouncing off walls, entering ears. The note fades, but the air remembers the pattern for a moment. If you strike another note, it joins the first, forming harmony. Soon, a melody appears, something that wasn't present in any single vibration alone. The melody exists because of the relationship between notes. It is emergent, greater than its parts. Reality might be much the same. The physical world, matter, space, time, could be the melody that emerges from countless tiny bits of information interacting. On their own, they mean nothing. Together they compose everything, and like any piece of music, the universe carries rhythm. Time is one beat following another. Space is the distance between those beats. What we call physical law is simply the tempo that keeps the music coherent. And when consciousness arose, it was as if the melody learned to listen to itself. Some modern physicists have even suggested that the boundary between information and matter is illusionary, that when you organize information enough, matter appears as its shadow. It's a poetic way of saying that order begets existence. Like frost forming on glass, information crystallizes into the visible world. But information doesn't just describe what is, it also describes what could be. That's the real wonder. Every bit carries both a truth and a potential. Every yes hides a possible no, waiting for its turn. The universe, then, is a sea of options gently choosing itself into form, moment by moment. If you've ever watched a snowflake fall, you've seen this play out. The pattern seems impossibly delicate, but it arises from simple rules repeated endlessly. Water molecules aligning, turning, branching. Out of repetition, beauty appears. Out of simplicity, complexity. The cosmos may work in much the same way. A handful of rules, repeated through endless scales, giving birth to infinite variety. Even the smallest change can echo through everything else. When you make a decision to speak, to pause, to breathe a little deeper, that choice ripples outward, maybe not through galaxies, but certainly through the web of human thought, through those who hear your words, through the air that carries them. Information moves on, reshaping reality in quiet ways. And if the universe truly computes itself, then nothing is wasted. Every fragment of data, every lost sound, every forgotten dream remains somewhere in the grand pattern. Energy can change form, but it never disappears. In the same way, perhaps every moment you've ever lived remains stored in the fabric of time, not gone, just woven deeper. It's comforting to imagine that in some silent corner of the universe, the laughter you shared, the thought you just had, the light of a distant star, all of it still exists as information, echoing softly in the great computation. And if the cosmos is indeed a kind of living equation, then meaning isn't something we impose on it. Meaning is built in. The universe doesn't need a reason to exist. The act of existing is its reason. It creates because creation is what it does, what it has always done. So as you lie there, let yourself drift into that thought, that you're not watching reality happen, you're participating in it. Each heartbeat, each breath, is the universe computing one more moment of itself. You're not outside the code, or above it, or beneath it. You are the code, the melody, the bit of yes or no that makes the next instant real. And when you fall asleep, perhaps the universe keeps whispering through you. A quiet hum of information rearranging itself, dreaming a little further into what it might become. Every so often, humanity pauses to look at the night sky, and realizes that we are surrounded by patterns. The stars scatter across the darkness like seeds, yet their motions are not random. They orbit, they align, they trace invisible geometries. The same elegance that shapes the spiral of a seashell also governs the arms of a galaxy. Even chaos, if you watch long enough, begins to hum with rhythm. Physicists have spent centuries trying to find the source of that rhythm, the single principle that could explain why the universe behaves so consistently from the tiniest particle to the farthest cluster of galaxies. Newton showed us how forces tie the heavens to the earth. Einstein revealed how gravity bends space and time into a single fabric. Quantum mechanics uncovered the strange probabilities behind every atom's behavior. Yet, somehow, these grand ideas still don't fit neatly together. It's as though we have two halves of a melody, one describing the cosmic dance of planets and stars, the other the jittering rhythm of subatomic particles. And we can sense they belong to the same song, but we haven't quite found the bridge between them. That bridge, scientists believe, may lie in symmetry. Symmetry is the universe's handwriting. It appears in the spin of atoms, the shapes of snowflakes, the balance of day and night. When a law of physics is the same everywhere, when it holds true no matter how you turn or shift perspective, that's symmetry at work. It's a quiet promise from nature. The rules won't change just because you do. Some physicists dream that all the forces of nature, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak interactions that bind atoms, might once have been a single, elegant force at the dawn of time. The universe has been cooling and expanding ever since, breaking that original symmetry into the complex world we know. If that is true, then everything, from quarks to consciousness, could be fragments of one early harmony, now scattered but still resonant. To explain this, scientists have explored theories that sound almost like poetry. Tiny vibrating filaments of energy, so small that even our best instruments cannot see them. These filaments, they say, might be the true foundation of matter, different notes in an invisible stringed instrument spanning the universe. The theory suggests that each vibration creates a different particle, a different form of matter, a different possibility. Whether these strings truly exist is still unknown, but the metaphor they offer is beautiful. It suggests that all of existence might be music, a cosmic symphony where every atom is a note, every galaxy a chord, and every thought a ripple in the melody. Another idea, the holographic principle, imagines that everything we experience, everything we see and feel, might be like a three-dimensional image projected from information encoded on a distant surface. Like a hologram, each small region of reality contains the pattern of the whole. You could zoom into any corner of the universe, and somehow all the information about the rest would still be there, folded within. It's a mind-bending notion, but it carries a certain gentleness too. If true, it would mean that nothing is truly isolated. Each part of the cosmos reflects the whole, like countless mirrors facing one another, endlessly repeating the same image from different angles. Look closely at a drop of water, and you can see a distorted reflection of the sky. Look at your own eye, and it mirrors the world around it. The universe, it seems, is built from reflections, energy folding back on itself, observing itself, learning its own shape. In physics, this idea of reflection isn't just poetic, it's built into the equations themselves. Many of the most fundamental laws remain the same, even if you flip time, reverse motion, or mirror the direction of space. The patterns persist. It's as though the universe keeps its balance by remembering how to look at itself. And perhaps that is why symmetry feels beautiful to us. A snowflake, a seashell, a piece of music that resolves perfectly. These things soothe us because they echo the deeper order from which we came. Our sense of beauty may simply be the brain recognizing harmony that already exists in nature. Yet, even in all this symmetry, there's a hint of asymmetry. The universe's gentle imperfection that allows it to evolve. If everything were perfectly balanced, nothing would change. A slight tilt, a small imbalance, gives birth to stars, to atoms, to us. It's as if the universe needs a tiny amount of chaos to make its art. When we search for unity in the equations of physics, we are, in a way, searching for ourselves. The same human desire for coherence that drives a musician to resolve a chord or a poet to complete a verse. The longing to make sense of things is not just intellectual, it's emotional, biological, woven into our design. The cosmos yearns for harmony, and so do we, because we are its echo. If you look inward, you can find that same pattern-seeking impulse at work in your own mind. The brain, like the universe, seeks unity. It connects fragments of experience into stories, turns noise into meaning, and organizes chaos into thought. The neural symmetries of your perception mirror the physical symmetries of the cosmos. You're made of the same mathematics that holds the stars in place. Maybe that's why the idea of a unified theory feels so hauntingly personal. It isn't just about understanding the universe. It's about remembering that we belong to it, that the same rhythm runs through our neurons and through the galaxies. And when you stand beneath the night sky, that truth becomes almost tangible. The patterns of constellations are illusions, of course. Stars separated by light years, appearing close only from our tiny point of view. Yet we can't help but trace connections between them. We draw lines where none exist, finding shapes, stories, and meaning. It's what the mind does. It's what the universe does through us. So perhaps the search for unity will never truly end, not because the answer doesn't exist, but because the act of searching is itself the point. The universe folding back upon itself, wondering what it's made of, through the eyes of those who wonder. If you look close enough, you might see that reflection shimmering even now, in your thoughts, in your breath, in the quiet order of your own heartbeat. The same symmetry that binds galaxies together hums softly beneath your ribs. The same desire for coherence that shaped the cosmos whispers in the way you seek peace, balance, and understanding. And maybe, in that moment, you realize that the mirror you've been peering into, the universe reflecting upon itself, was never out there among the stars. It was always here, within. There's a quiet rhythm to existence that we call time. You can hear it in the ticking of a clock, in the soft swing of your breath, in the way morning light spills slowly across the floor. It feels like the most certain thing in the world, always flowing forward, always carrying us along. But is it really flowing at all? Einstein once described time and space as threads woven into a single fabric, not separate strands, but one continuous whole. He called it space-time, a tapestry where events are not created or destroyed but simply exist, each in its own coordinate. Past, present and future are not places you travel through. They are parts of one enormous landscape. If you could step outside that landscape and look down at it, you might see all of history laid out at once. The birth of stars, the rise of cities, your own heartbeat. Frozen, like beads on an endless string. This is sometimes called the block universe view, a picture where time does not flow, it simply is. We experience it differently because we live inside it, not above it. Our minds trace the line bead by bead, moment by moment, giving us the sense of motion, of change, of progress. But the deeper physics suggests that every moment, from the first spark of the Big Bang to the breath you're taking now, still exists somewhere on that infinite line. Nothing vanishes, it only recedes from view. It's a soothing thought, in a way, that everything we've ever loved or lost is still out there, folded into the structure of space-time. But it also raises a haunting question. If everything already exists, what is the present? Why does it feel so fragile, so alive, so fleeting? The answer may lie not in the universe, but in us. Neuroscience tells us that what we call now isn't a sharp instant, but a short window, about a few heartbeats long, during which the brain gathers information and stitches it together into a single flowing experience. It's not reality that moves forward. It's our perception, sewing frames into a film. You might think of it as an internal editor, constantly smoothing the gaps between moments so that life feels continuous. When you watch a movie, the film doesn't truly move. It's a series of still images flashing rapidly enough that your mind connects them into motion. The brain does something similar with time itself. Experiments have shown that when we react to something, a sound, a touch, a flash of light, our brain actually processes it after it happens, then shifts our awareness slightly backward so it feels immediate. We live, in other words, in a gently delayed present, a fraction of a second behind the world's unfolding, yet it feels seamless. That's how good the illusion is, and it's not the same for everyone. Time feels elastic because it's tied to attention and emotion. A joyful hour can vanish in minutes, while a few moments of fear can stretch into eternity. When we're children, everything is new, and the brain fills with detail, more memories per second. The world feels slow and infinite. As we age and patterns repeat, the mind takes fewer snapshots, and time seems to accelerate. Even our heartbeat can alter our perception. In calm moments, when it slows, time feels gentle. In stress, when it races, the world contracts, every second, sharpened. The rhythm of life doesn't just measure time, it helps create it. Physics describes time as a dimension, but our minds treat it as a story, with beginnings, middles, and ends. Without that story, we'd be lost. Time gives shape to experience, turning random moments into narrative. It allows us to say before and after, to remember, to plan, to hope. Yet if we take physics seriously, all those distinctions blur. The past still exists, the future already exists, and the present is just where your consciousness happens to be focused. It's like a spotlight moving across a vast stage, illuminating one scene at a time while the rest waits in the dark. Still, even if the universe doesn't truly flow, our experience of its flow might serve a deeper purpose. Time may be the mind's way of translating an eternal, static cosmos into something we can live inside. We need motion to make meaning. We need before and after to understand change, growth, love, and loss. Without that illusion, there would be no story, only the stillness of everything at once. Think about music. A melody exists all at once on the page, every note already written, but we can only hear it by moving through it moment by moment. The beauty lies in that movement, in anticipation, in resolution. Time is the melody of reality, and consciousness is how we listen. That's why the same second can feel completely different depending on what fills it. Waiting for a reply, holding someone's hand, watching a sunset fade. Each stretches or compresses in its own way. The clock on the wall ticks evenly, but the clock inside us is emotional, elastic, deeply personal. And in this elastic experience lies something profoundly human. Our awareness of time gives us nostalgia for the past and longing for the future. It gives weight to memory and meaning to moments. It reminds us that everything, even wonder, changes shape. Still, there's comfort in knowing that on some level nothing is truly gone. The laughter of friends, the warmth of a vanished summer, the sound of rain you once listened to as a child, all of it still exists somewhere in space-time's quiet geometry. Your life is not a line that ends, but a pattern woven into the tapestry of the universe. So tonight, as you listen, you might feel time soften. You may sense that it isn't flowing past you, but unfolding around you. Each breath expands the present a little further. Each heartbeat anchors you inside eternity's gentle rhythm. Perhaps the truth is that You don't live inside time at all. Time lives inside you, beating, remembering, imagining, weaving motion into meaning. And when you finally rest, time will rest too, curling itself gently around you, like a blanket, still and infinite. If the universe could look back at itself, what would it see? Perhaps it would see you, a conscious being, sitting quietly, listening to the hum of existence and wondering what it means to be real. Somewhere between the galaxies and your own thoughts, awareness blooms, small, fragile, but luminous. It is one of the universe's strangest miracles. That matter, after billions of years of unfolding, has begun to notice itself. This thought is both humbling and intimate. You are made from the same atoms forged in stars, yet those atoms have organized into a pattern capable of reflection. Through you, the cosmos contemplates its own design. Through your eyes, the universe becomes visible to itself. It's easy to forget how extraordinary that is. That consciousness, something so soft and subjective, emerges from the same laws that guide falling apples and spinning galaxies. Science can describe the mechanics of perception, but not its essence. We can measure the signals travelling along neurons, the tiny chemical exchanges that mark the presence of a thought, but the experience itself, the feeling of being, the quiet inner light behind every sensation, remains elusive. It is what philosopher David Chalmers once called the hard problem of consciousness, how physical processes in the brain produce the subjective experience of awareness. To make sense of this, some thinkers propose that mind and matter might not be opposites at all, but two aspects of the same underlying reality. You can think of it like a coin. One side glints with the light of matter, the other with the glow of mind. Turn it one way, you see particles and energy. Turn it the other, you feel thoughts and emotions. They're not separate, just different reflections of the same surface. That idea, called a dual aspect theory, suggests that consciousness is not something added to the universe, but something always there, woven into the fabric of existence alongside space and time. When the conditions are right, in stars, in planets, in living systems, that latent potential awakens, and the universe begins to experience itself from within. It's not an idea of ego or centrality. It doesn't mean the universe was made for us. It means that awareness may be as fundamental as gravity, as essential as light. One more thread in the cosmic weave. Matter expresses itself as form, and consciousness as understanding. The two together create reality as we know it. You might picture it as a grand mirror, the cosmos endlessly reflecting upon its own patterns. The stars shine, and somewhere, on one small planet, those photons strike eyes capable of seeing them. The act of seeing completes the loop. Light leaving a sun millions of years ago finds meaning at last in the mind that beholds it. That loop exists everywhere, at every scale. The observer and the observed are not enemies, they are partners in creation. In the quantum world, measurement changes what's measured, not because thought magically alters matter, but because the act of interaction reshapes the system. Every encounter, every observation is a collaboration. You and the universe are not on opposite sides of the glass. You are the glass itself, the transparent boundary where inside and outside meet. And that boundary is fluid. It shifts with every breath, every thought. When you listen to the sound of rain, you become the listener. But if you pay attention long enough, you realize the listening and the sound are inseparable. The awareness that hears is part of what's being heard. Reality is a conversation, and consciousness is its language. Even storytelling, one of our oldest human instincts, is an extension of that conversation. To tell a story is to turn chaos into order, to find structure in the noise. The same principle that drives physicists to seek a unified theory drives poets to seek meaning in a line of words. Both are acts of pattern finding, both are ways the universe organises itself through us. When a scientist writes an equation to describe a falling star, it's the cosmos learning to explain its own behaviour. When an artist paints the night sky, it's the same event, matter expressing itself as beauty. When you remember your childhood, when you imagine tomorrow, when you speak a word, you're participating in that same act of translation, turning the raw data of existence into the story of a life. Perhaps that's why we're drawn to understanding, even when the mystery deepens. We are wired to seek coherence, not because we must, but because the act of seeking is what makes us alive. Awareness feeds on pattern, curiosity is its heartbeat. The universe doesn't ask us to solve it, only to notice it. And when we notice, something shifts. The line between observer and participant blurs. The astronomer peering into the dark is not separate from the galaxy she studies. The light from that galaxy enters her telescope, her eyes, her brain, becomes part of her perception. In that instant, she and the stars are connected by the same photon, part of one continuous event. Every act of observation is also an act of creation. Not in a magical sense, but in a relational one. To look, to listen, to think is to bring part of the universe into focus. Before you pay attention, a sound is only vibration. When you listen, it becomes music. Before you look, the world is a blur of potential. When you look, it becomes form, colour, meaning. Awareness is the lens through which existence sharpens itself. Without it, the cosmos might still exist, but it would remain unrecognised. A beautiful book never opened. Maybe that's why consciousness feels both fragile and vast. Fragile because it depends on delicate biology. Vast because it connects directly to the structure of the universe. Every thought you have ripples through matter. Every neuron that fires releases energy into the same web of reality that binds the stars. You're a small, local event of cosmic awareness, one wave in a sea of perception that spans everything. And yet, the most astonishing part may be this. Awareness isn't only about looking outward. It also turns inward. The same curiosity that makes you gaze at the stars is the same impulse that asks, "Who am I?" Both questions point to the same mystery, the search for unity between the knower and the known. That question, softly echoing inside your mind, marks the threshold of our next journey. Because if reality depends on perception, then understanding reality means understanding how perception itself is made. So take a breath. Feel the quiet hum of awareness within you. The story of the cosmos now narrows its gaze, from galaxies and light years to the few centimetres between your ears, where another universe unfolds, one built not of stars, but of thought. Imagine waking up for just a moment in complete darkness. No sound, no scent, no sight. Your mind would not sit quietly. It would begin to imagine. It would reach for shapes, echoes, guesses. It would start building a world even before light returned. That quiet reaching is what your brain does every moment of your life. It doesn't simply record reality, it predicts it. From the instant you open your eyes, your brain is already a few steps ahead of the world. It anticipates the next sound, the next shadow, the next word in this sentence before it's spoken. It is constantly comparing what it expects with what actually arrives, and adjusting the picture it paints. What you experience as the world is really a delicate negotiation between expectation and evidence. Neuroscientists like Carl Friston and Anil Seth describe this as the brain's most important rule: reduce surprise. Not the kind of surprise that comes with gifts or birthdays, but surprise in the mathematical sense. The difference between what your brain predicts and what it encounters. Every moment, the brain tries to keep that difference as small as possible, updating its model to stay in tune with reality. You can think of it as a conversation between inside and outside. The brain whispers, "I believe this is happening," and the world replies, "Almost, but not quite." That dialogue happens hundreds of times a second. quietly, invisibly. The result is the seamless movie of perception you experience from morning to night. A simple example: when you walk across a room, you don't calculate every step from scratch. Your brain predicts how far your leg will move, how heavy the floor will feel, how the light will shift as you turn. Most of the time, its predictions are perfect. When they're not, when the floor is slippery or the step lower than you thought, you stumble. Surprise forces an update, and the model of the world grows slightly more accurate. Even your senses, which seem so direct, are built from guesses. What you see isn't a raw photograph of the world, but the brain's best bet about what's out there based on incomplete information. Your eyes are messengers, not windows. They deliver streams of light and colour, but it's your brain that turns those signals into objects. Tables, trees, faces, meaning. You can test this easily. Have you ever heard someone call your name in a crowd when no one actually did? Or seen a shadow in a dark hallway and thought it was a person? Those are the brain's predictions getting ahead of the facts. It fills in blanks before the data arrive. Sometimes it guesses wrong, but most of the time, the illusion works beautifully. Even colour, that vivid, emotional quality of the world, is a kind of agreement between light and expectation. Your eyes detect certain wavelengths, but your brain decides what they mean. A banana looks yellow not because it radiates yellowness, but because your brain has learned to label that particular pattern of light as such. Under a different sun, it might look grey. Yet your brain keeps it yellow for consistency's sake, maintaining the illusion of stability in a shifting world. You've seen this in optical illusions, images where your perception insists on something that isn't physically there. The famous dress that looked blue and black to some, white and gold to others, that wasn't the dress changing, but the assumptions in each viewer's brain about the lighting around it. Two minds, two predictions, two realities. Hearing plays the same trick. If someone whispers a phrase that could be either green needle or brainstorm, what you hear depends on which one you expect. The sound waves are identical. It's your prediction that decides. All of these examples reveal the same truth. Perception is not passive. It's participatory. You don't simply look at the world, you generate it moment by moment in collaboration with your senses. Reality for you is the brain's best hallucination, one so convincing that almost everyone's version of it agrees most of the time. Anil Seth calls this a controlled hallucination. Controlled, because the brain's predictions are constantly tethered to input. Hallucination, because what you perceive is never the world itself, only the story your brain tells about it. That story is built for survival, not for truth. It emphasizes what's useful, colour, edge, motion, and filters out what isn't. It keeps you alive, even if it keeps you slightly deceived. It's easy to imagine this as a flaw, but it's actually a remarkable efficiency. The world contains far more information than any brain could process directly, so your mind compresses, predicts, simplifies, and in doing so, creates a coherent, livable experience. It's like a painter using only a few brushstrokes to suggest a forest. Your mind fills in the rest. This predictive power is why habits form, why learning feels smoother with repetition. Each time you experience something, your brain refines its guess. When you catch a ball, play a note on a piano, or recognize a friend's voice, you're seeing the success of 1,000 predictions made and corrected in an instant. Even emotion plays a role. Fear sharpens your expectations for danger. Joy widens them, letting you see more possibilities. In a sense, feelings are the brain's way of colouring its predictions, weighting certain outcomes over others. They guide attention toward what matters most. You can see this clearly in dreams. When sensory input fades, your brain's predictive engine doesn't stop, it just runs without correction. With no external data to constrain it, it generates entire worlds from memory and imagination. Dreams are what happens when the brain's model of reality starts to improvise freely, painting from the inside out. When you wake, the model tightens again. The sensory data return. The hallucination becomes more stable, more consistent with others. Yet, it remains a hallucination nonetheless. A shared, negotiated one that lets billions of brains coexist in the same apparent world. And maybe that's the quiet beauty of it. Reality feels solid not because it truly is, but because all our guesses overlap just enough to hold hands. The tree you see and the tree I see are both products of expectation and evidence, similar enough for agreement, different enough to remind us that every mind lives in its own version of truth. So the next time you catch yourself mishearing a word or mistaking a shadow for something more, you might smile and remember, this is how it's meant to work. The world you know is the brain's ongoing act of imagination, constantly revised, lovingly maintained. It is the art of prediction masquerading as certainty. Perhaps that's what consciousness really is. Not the receipt of reality, but the story we tell ourselves to keep surprise at bay. A story detailed enough to feel real and gentle enough to believe. And as you breathe now, with the faint rhythm of your heartbeat keeping time, your brain continues that story, predicting the next sound, the next thought, the next breath, all part of the same quiet miracle, a world imagined into being, one moment at a time. Light enters the eye like a traveller arriving from a distant shore. It carries stories, reflections from mountains, faces, oceans, and stars, and yet what it tells you is never the whole truth. You do not see the world as it is. You see the world as your mind allows it to appear. The journey begins simply. Photons, tiny packets of light, stream through your pupils and strike the back of your eyes. There, in a thin layer of cells called the retina, the story starts to unfold. Some cells respond to brightness, others to colour, others to motion. Each sends electrical messages down the optic nerve, as if scribes were rushing to deliver their fragments of a vast painting. But those fragments by themselves are meaningless. They're like letters without words, scattered brushstrokes without a shape. The brain must assemble them, and it does so not by reading the light directly, but by comparing it to what it already knows. This is the hidden truth behind sight. You never see light. You see meaning. You see memory. The sky looks blue, not because the colour blue exists up there, but because sunlight scatters through the air, and your brain translates that scattered light into something familiar. Another creature, with different eyes, would see an entirely different sky. Take a bee, for example. It can see ultraviolet light, wavelengths invisible to you. To a bee, flowers glow with patterns you can't even imagine, maps that guide it toward nectar. A snake, tuned to infrared, senses the heat of your body even in total darkness. A bat paints the world with echoes. For each species, reality is edited to match its needs. The German biologist Jakob von Uexküll called this unique sensory bubble an Umwelt, a self-contained world of perception. Each creature lives in its own Umwelt, its own slice of truth. There is no single reality shared by all beings, only overlapping versions of it. For us, sight is dominant. For others, smell, sound, or vibration take its place. Each organism inhabits a world shaped by its senses and filtered by its brain. Think of it as a cosmic gallery where every species is looking at the same sculpture, but each under different lighting. The shape is one, but the shadows differ. The human world, bright with colour and distance, is just one of countless possible renderings of the same underlying reality. Even among humans, perception varies. Look at a sunset. The soft orange bleeding into violet. For some, the colours are vivid. For others, muted or shifted entirely. Those with colour blindness perceive a different palette, no less real, just differently tuned. Yet all of us agree enough to call it sunset. Our shared illusion binds us together. Your brain takes shortcuts to keep the world stable. If you look at a green leaf under the warm glow of a lamp, the light striking your eyes is actually more yellow. But your mind quietly corrects it, preserving the leaf's greenness. It assumes consistency, even when reality changes. This is why you don't notice how much the colour of light shifts throughout the day. Your brain edits the movie before you see it. Everywhere you look, there are examples of this quiet editing. The blind spot where the optic nerve exits the eye, a gap in your vision, is seamlessly filled by the brain. The edges of objects appear sharper than they really are, because the mind exaggerates contrast to make boundaries clear. Even depth is an illusion stitched from clues, shadows, focus, the way two eyes compare images from slightly different angles. The world you see is a hallucination that has passed its quality check. It's stable enough to navigate by, but still a construction. You can sense this when illusions break it. Think of a picture that seems to move even though it's still, or lines that appear bent through there, straight. Your brain insists on patterns because it hates ambiguity. It would rather invent a wrong answer than admit it doesn't know, but that's not a flaw, it's efficiency. The world bombards you with far more data than you could possibly process. If your brain tried to see everything exactly as it is, you would drown in detail. Instead, it gives you a model, a simulation that's useful enough to live by. What you call vision is that model. Elegant, efficient, and deeply personal. This is why seeing feels effortless. It's not that the brain works less, it's that it has become so practiced at prediction that it doesn't need to think about it. You open your eyes, and the world simply appears, smooth, coherent, alive. You never notice the immense computation behind it, and yet, because this process is predictive, it can be deceived. In experiments, when scientists slightly delay what a person sees compared to what they feel, the brain quietly adjusts, shifting perception so the two align. It bends reality to preserve continuity. It would rather edit time than allow confusion. Every blink, every glance is an act of quiet storytelling. The brain builds a stable world, and your eyes feed it just enough evidence to keep the narrative believable. Vision is less like taking a photograph and more like performing a play, one where the scenery updates continuously, guided by memory and expectation. Once you understand that, the world becomes even more beautiful. The colours of a flower, the shimmer of the sea, the gleam of morning light on a window, all are collaborations between light and mind. They are meanings, not things. The universe provides the ingredients, and your brain cooks them into experience. This doesn't make the world less real. It makes it more wondrous. Because the same physics that shapes a photon's path also shapes the neurons interpreting it. You and the light are part of one continuous process. The act of seeing completes the circle. The light leaves a star, travels across space, touches your eye, and in that instant the universe becomes aware of its own shine. Perhaps that's why sight feels spiritual to us. We speak of enlightenment, of vision, of insight. To see clearly, inside or out, has always meant more than just the mechanics of eyes. It means awakening to how intertwined perception and reality truly are. And so, next time you gaze at the sky, whether blue, grey or gold, you might remember that you're not merely looking at it. You're participating in it. The colours bloom inside you, the edges sharpen because your mind desires them to. The image you see is half world, half self. You don't see with your eyes alone. You see with your history, your expectations, your emotions. You see with every memory that ever taught you what the world should look like. And that's the gentle truth of sight. What you see is not the truth of the universe, but the truth of your relationship with it. A private version of reality, shared just enough to let us find each other in the light. Close your eyes for a moment. The world doesn't vanish. It changes. Without vision, other doors open. You start to notice the air brushing your skin, the hum of a refrigerator in another room, the faint rhythm of your heartbeat. The world hasn't gone silent or dark, it has simply shifted its language. Hearing, touch, taste, smell. These are not secondary senses. They are threads in the same tapestry of perception, each one translating the universe into a form your brain can understand. Together, they form a kind of symphony, not a collection of separate instruments, but one continuous piece of music that tells you where you are and what it means to be here. Sound, for instance, is nothing more than vibration. Air molecules jostle one another like dancers in a crowded room, passing along ripples of compression and release. When those ripples reach your ears, they set tiny membranes trembling. Your inner ear converts that motion into electrical signals, and your brain interprets them as tone and rhythm. But what you actually hear, a bird, a voice, a song, is not in the air. It's in your mind. Every sound is, in a way, a memory. The bark of a dog isn't a simple vibration. It's a story. Your brain compares the pattern to all the sounds it has ever known, finds the closest match, and fills in the gaps. That's why a familiar voice can comfort you even when you can't see the person, because the sound is wrapped in context, history, emotion. The brain doesn't just register pitch, it recognizes meaning. Sometimes your mind even creates sound where none exists. Have you ever heard your phone buzz when it didn't? Or thought you heard your name whispered across a crowded room? These are echoes of expectation, your brain predicting what should happen next. The mind anticipates its symphony before the orchestra plays. Touch tells a similar story, but through pressure instead of vibration. The skin, your largest organ, is a vast landscape of sensors tuned to texture, temperature, and motion. Each touch sends a cascade of signals upward, where the brain maps them into a living image of the body. When you rest your hand on a table, millions of tiny nerves report back instantly, some sensing the weight, others the warmth, others the faint vibration of stillness itself. The miracle is how quickly the brain turns these signals into something coherent. Within a fraction of a second, it merges the messages from different fingers, adjusts for motion, predicts what should happen next, and produces the sensation we simply call touch. It's an act of interpretation, not just reception. You don't feel the table directly. You feel your brain's best reconstruction of what that table should feel like. Sometimes the reconstruction can be fooled. If you cross your fingers and roll a small marble between them, it feels like two marbles instead of one. The brain misreads the geometry of touch. Its model expects the crossed fingers to be touching two separate objects, so it generates that experience even when the world disagrees. Again, the mind chooses coherence over accuracy. And then there's taste and smell, the twin senses of chemistry. They work more closely together than most people realize. When you eat an apple, what you call flavor is mostly smell. The scent of molecules rising through the back of your throat into your nose. Taste alone, sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and savory, is simple, almost primitive. But when combined with smell, it becomes a symphony. Coffee, rain, pine, smoke. All these experiences are built from invisible particles interacting with receptors deep in your sinuses. Each molecule carries a tiny piece of the world's story, and your brain translates it into emotion. The scent of the ocean might make you nostalgic. The aroma of baking bread might make you feel safe. That's because the pathways for smell run directly into areas of the brain responsible for memory and emotion. Smell is the sense most tied to time. A single whiff can transport you across decades. It is, quite literally, the brain's time machine. What's remarkable is how all these senses, so different in their mechanics, blend seamlessly into one continuous experience. The clinking of a cup, the warmth of its surface, the smell of the tea rising. Your brain merges them into a single event, having tea. Each sense provides a different instrument, but the melody they play together is the feeling of being alive. Neuroscientists call this process multisensory integration, but you can think of it as harmony. Your brain is the conductor, balancing input from eyes, ears, skin, tongue, and nose, adjusting each one's volume so that the overall song feels right. When the timing is off, when what you see doesn't match what you hear, the brain gets confused. That's why ventriloquists can make it seem as though a puppet speaks, or why movies must sync dialogue precisely with lip movement. The illusion depends on sensory unity. Even balance, your sense of up and down, is part of the same orchestra. Tiny crystals inside your inner ear detect gravity and motion. They tell you when you're tilting, spinning, falling. Without them, the world would seem to swirl and drift. Gravity, that old companion, becomes another kind of touch, always pulling, always guiding. All of this, the air vibrating, the skin sensing, the chemicals drifting, could feel mechanical. But when you pause to notice it, it becomes poetry. Each sense is a translator between you and the universe, converting physics into feeling. The world doesn't just happen to you, it happens through you. And there's something tender about that realization. Every sound you hear, every breeze on your skin, every taste is a tiny act of intimacy between you and existence. The universe reaches out and your senses answer. You're not apart from the world, you're woven into its fabric by the threads of perception. It also means that reality's harmony is fragile. When one instrument falters, when hearing fades, or sight dims, the others adjust, rising to fill the silence. The orchestra never stops. The brain keeps composing, even when one section grows quiet. In that resilience lies a quiet lesson. Coherence, after all, is not proof of truth, only of balance. The fact that your senses agree does not mean the world is exactly as they describe it. It means your brain has found a way to make peace between them, to create a world smooth enough to live inside. And maybe that's what life itself is, not a search for perfect accuracy, but for harmony. A way to keep the song playing softly, even as the notes change. So the next time you hear a sound that moves you, or feel a breeze that stirs something wordless inside, remember, you are part of a symphony that began long before you were born and will continue long after. The vibration of air, the whisper of skin, the scent of the earth, all of it joining, note by note, to form the music of being. Close your eyes and feel where you end. You might say your body stops at your skin, a simple border separating self from world. But if you sit quietly for a moment, that border starts to blur. You can feel your breath expanding beyond it, your heartbeat echoing into the air, the warmth of the room blending with your own. The truth is softer than we think. You're not just inside your body is also inside your mind. The brain, after all, is blind to the world. It floats in darkness, sealed within the skull, receiving nothing directly, no light, no touch, no sound. What it knows of the body comes through electrical whispers carried by nerves. It builds a model, an internal map, of flesh, bone, and space. That map is what you experience as being you. But like any map, it can be redrawn. In one of neuroscience's most quietly astonishing experiments, a person sits with one hand hidden from view, while a rubber hand lies in front of them on the table. The experimenter strokes both the real and the fake hand at the same time. After a minute, something strange happens. The brain begins to adopt the rubber hand as its own. When the fake hand is touched, the person flinches. When it's threatened, their heart rate jumps. Their sense of self has expanded to include something that isn't truly them. This is called the rubber hand illusion, and it reveals how fluid our body image really is. The brain doesn't locate you by anatomy, but by agreement, by synchrony between sight, touch, and expectation. When the senses line up convincingly, the brain says, yes, that's me. The same principle underlies virtual reality. When you move your head and the image shifts perfectly with you, the brain accepts the digital body as real, even if you know it isn't. It's why you might feel vertigo while watching a virtual cliff, or flinch when something rushes toward you on a screen. The brain prefers coherence over truth. It doesn't ask, is this real? But does this make sense? Even without illusion, your sense of ownership over your body is constantly updated. When you pick up a tool, a brush, a tennis racket, a walking stick, the brain extends its body map to include it. For a moment, that object becomes part of you. The same neurons that track your hand begin tracking the new extension. In this way, the boundary of self stretches and contracts like breath. But the body you feel is more than geometry and touch. It's also emotion. Deep inside you, signals rise from organs, blood and muscle. A quiet tide of information that neuroscientists call interoception. It's the sense of your inner world, heartbeat, hunger, warmth, fatigue. You rarely notice it directly, yet it colours every moment. When your heart races, you call it fear. When it slows, you call it calm. When your stomach twists, you might say anxiety. When it softens, relief. Emotions are not separate from the body. They are the body interpreted by the brain. They are what it feels like when your physiology speaks in the language of experience. Imagine sitting by the sea. The steady rhythm of the waves begins to sync with your breath. Your heart rate falls into their pattern. The border between your body's rhythm and the world's rhythm disappears. In that moment, you are not a separate entity looking at the ocean. You are the ocean, briefly aware of itself. This constant dialogue between brain and body is what allows you to exist at all. Without it, even your thoughts would feel untethered. In fact, when scientists study people who lose certain forms of bodily feedback as through injury or paralysis, their sense of presence becomes fragile. They describe feeling like ghosts inside their own minds, detached from the physical world. The self, it turns out, is anchored in sensation. That anchoring, however, is flexible. If your body can adopt a rubber hand or a tool, or even a virtual avatar, it means your self is not a fixed point, but a process. It's a story the brain tells to keep the system stable. A story of ownership, of continuity, of I. You can think of it like a narrator in a novel. The narrator isn't the book itself, but the voice that connects its chapters. Without that voice, the story fragments. The self works the same way. A quiet, ongoing commentary stitching sensations, memories and emotions into a single stream called me. But what happens when that narration pauses, in deep sleep, in meditation, or in moments of awe? The borders loosen. People often describe such experiences as feeling expanded and connected or free. The brain temporarily relaxes its tight hold on the body map, allowing a sense of unity with the world. In those moments, the self seems to dissolve, not lost but finally quiet. There's something deeply peaceful about realizing that you are not confined to your outline. You're a pattern of connection between skin and air, neuron and heartbeat, perception and prediction. The body is less a vessel and more an instrument through which consciousness plays. Every breath, every step, every glance is a note in the melody of being. Even pain, uncomfortable as it is, belongs to that music. It reminds the brain where the boundaries lie, when to retreat, when to heal. Without it, the body might forget itself entirely. Every sensation, pleasant or not, contributes to the coherence of existence. When you move your hand through space, you're not simply commanding muscles. You're adjusting the story of selfhood. The mind predicts the movement, the body fulfills it, the senses confirm it. A perfect cycle of intention and feedback. You are the loop itself, not just its starting point, and so perhaps the self is less a thing and more an activity, like a flame, sustained only by constant change. As long as perception flows, you exist. When the flow stills, you rest. You are the narrator, yes, but also the listener. The body tells its story in pulse and breath. The mind translates that rhythm into identity. Between the two lies the quiet truth. You are the space where world and body meet, an ever-shifting boundary painted in sensation. So when you next feel the ground under your feet, or the slow rise of your chest as you breathe, remember that these are not mere signals. They are reminders that you are alive in more ways than one. Not a thing within the world, but a pattern the world is dreaming through you. The body you think you live in is not a cage, but a bridge, one that connects thought to matter, imagination to movement, self to universe. And across that bridge, awareness walks endlessly, step by gentle step. Imagine you're a small creature at the dawn of life. No cities, no language, no philosophy, just the endless struggle to stay alive. The sun rises and sets, shapes move in the tall grass. Somewhere nearby there's food, somewhere else, danger. You don't need to know the truth of reality, only enough to tell the difference between a meal and a mistake. And so, evolution does something clever. It doesn't teach creatures to see the world as it truly is. It teaches them to see what helps them survive. It shapes perception, not for accuracy, but for usefulness. This is the quiet trick behind all our senses. Every colour you see, every sound you hear, every shape you recognise is filtered through millions of years of trial and error. Nature's goal was never to make you a perfect observer, only an efficient one. It built shortcuts and symbols, not windows. Donald Hoffman, a cognitive scientist, describes this idea as the evolutionary interface theory. He suggests that what we perceive is less like a photograph of reality and more like the icons on a computer screen. The icons aren't literal. A blue folder on your desktop doesn't contain actual paper. It's a simple, safe way to interact with something complex and invisible beneath the surface. The same may be true for our perception of the world. When you see a ripe red fruit, your brain isn't revealing the fruit's true essence. It's translating wavelengths of light into a signal that once kept our ancestors alive. Red meant sweet calories, energy, and survival. A snake's eye, tuned differently, might see the same fruit as a blur of heat and motion. A bee, sensitive to ultraviolet light, sees landing patterns invisible to us. Each creature receives its own interface, a custom version of the same hidden world, designed by evolution to fit its needs. We like to think that seeing is believing, but in truth, seeing is adapting. The colours of the rainbow, the smoothness of a stone, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, these are interpretations, not properties. They are the language your brain invented to make survival simpler. It's a strange thought, that the entire visible world might be a kind of user-friendly illusion. But in a way, that illusion is an act of mercy. The real universe, a sea of quantum fields, particles, and probabilities, would be too complex for a biological brain to process. So evolution gives us a shorthand, a symbolic display. We don't see atoms, we see apples. We don't hear pressure waves, we hear laughter. We don't sense electromagnetic radiation, we see a sunset. The truth is hidden so that life can function. This principle isn't unique to humans. A frog's vision is tuned to detect motion. It can't see a still fly even if the insect is right in front of it. A bat maps its world with echoes, building a three-dimensional soundscape invisible to us. A shark can sense faint electrical currents in the water, the heartbeat of prey. Each species carries a different doorway into reality, and yet each lives as if its version is the only one. The bee believes in its ultraviolet flowers. The frog believes in its moving dots. We believe in our solid world of colour and touch. But beneath those surfaces, everything is one shimmering continuum. Energy, information, rhythm, Life simply perceives it in fragments, the way a prism breaks white light into separate hues. If you imagine reality as a vast ocean, every species swims at a different depth, tuned to what it needs. Some notice the surface, others the currents below. None can see the entire sea, and perhaps that's by design. Evolution doesn't reward curiosity for its own sake. It rewards the balance between ignorance and knowledge that keeps us alive. Hoffman's research even uses computer simulations to test this. In models where creatures perceive reality accurately, they don't survive as long as those that perceive it efficiently. Truth, it turns out, is too slow and expensive. The mind that simplifies wins. Nature, ever pragmatic, chose usefulness over truth. This doesn't make life a lie. It makes it practical. The illusion works because it's consistent. You can trust the world enough to walk across it, eat from it, love within it. The interface may hide the machinery, but it gives you a stage to live on. Think about how we design our own technologies, a phone screen for example. We don't show the electrical circuits or binary code. We give users icons, smooth animations, colours. We hide complexity to protect them from overload. Evolution did exactly that with consciousness. Your mind is the interface. Reality is the hidden circuitry. Even your sense of danger and beauty follow this pattern. The sight of fire is beautiful and terrifying at once, a signal encoded to keep you near its warmth, but far from its burn. The same with the colour of ripe fruit, the sound of running water, the rhythm of a heartbeat beside yours. Every pleasure and fear has been tuned by selection to guide behaviour. You are, in essence, nature's finest compromise between truth and survival. It's humbling, but also freeing. It means that you don't have to despair at not knowing the full reality. No one does. No creature ever could. We're all walking through a soft mirage that works well enough to let us live, love, and wonder. And within that wonder lies something even more profound. The illusion itself is evolving. The interface continues to upgrade. Human consciousness, language, and imagination are nature's latest experiments in seeing a little further beyond the icons. We are the universe slowly decoding its own display. Perhaps that's what curiosity really is, evolution's next step, an instinct not just to survive but to understand. The mind that once learned to spot ripe fruit now wonders why fruit exists at all. The eye that once avoided predators now gazes into galaxies. The same machinery, the same trick, but played at a grander scale. So when you look at the world and sense that there must be more than what meets the eye, you are right. The visible world is a simplified translation, a safe interface. But beyond it, just out of reach, is the raw, radiant complexity of what is. Reality, then, is less like a photograph and more like a safety manual written by evolution. Clear enough to keep us alive, simple enough to fit on one page. And within its margins, small and trembling, consciousness scribbles a question. What lies beyond the manual? The answer may be that we're already touching it, in imagination, in science, in love, in the quiet urge to know. Even our limited view carries traces of the infinite. The trick that began as survival has turned into curiosity. The illusion, refined through eons, now looks back at itself and smiles. Somewhere in the dark, a candle flickers. One small flame, and the room changes. Shadows step back. Corners soften, shapes emerge. Nothing in the air has changed, the light has simply connected what was already there. In a quiet way, that's what consciousness does. It doesn't add anything new to the universe. It illuminates the patterns that already exist, binding them together into awareness. Scientists like Giulio Tononi have tried to describe this in a theory called integrated information. The idea is gentle enough to grasp without equations. In essence, Consciousness arises wherever information becomes deeply intertwined, where signals connect so closely that the whole cannot be reduced to its parts. A single spark of information might exist in a stone or a raindrop, but when billions of sparks link in harmony, something new appears, a glow of awareness, the candlelight of mind. You can imagine the brain as a vast city at night. Each neuron is a tiny house with its own light, switching on and off in conversation with its neighbours. During sleep, some districts go dim, others remain alive. When you wake, the entire city brightens. What makes you is not any single bulb, but the pattern formed when they all connect. It's the integration, the network, not the node, that gives rise to experience. Tononi expresses it with a simple metaphor. Consciousness is not located in the brain's machinery, but in the way information flows through it. It's not stored in the neurons, but in their relationships. Just as music isn't found in a single note, but in the harmony between notes, awareness is the music created by the brain's symphony of signals. This picture has a quiet beauty. It suggests that consciousness is not something added to the universe later, but a natural result of its complexity. Whenever information organizes itself enough to recognize patterns within itself, awareness blossoms, like a flame emerging from friction, or a wave forming from water that was already moving. Some thinkers take this idea further, imagining that consciousness is not limited to brains at all. If information is fundamental, the true fabric of the cosmos, as physics increasingly suggests, then awareness might be its mirror, the inner side of reality's structure. In this sense, matter and mind are two faces of the same mystery. One expresses itself as energy and form, the other as perception and meaning. You could think of it like breathing. The inhale is matter, the exhale is awareness. Together they make the rhythm of existence. One inward, one outward, but never separate. If that sounds poetic, it is, but it is also deeply logical. Every physical system that holds information, from atoms to ecosystems, already participates in this dance. The difference between lifeless matter and living mind may be one of degree, not of kind. The more tightly the parts communicate, the more self-aware the whole becomes. Imagine a candle in a dark cathedral. Alone, it gives off a small circle of light. Add a few more candles and the circles begin to overlap. Soon the darkness fills with soft radiance. That is integration, the linking of signals into something larger, something that seems to stand above its ingredients. Consciousness may work like that, many small processes combining until the light feels continuous. It also means that awareness has no strict boundaries. Your thoughts flow into emotions, emotions into memories, memories into the subtle sensations of your body. They are all connected by invisible threads of information. You're not a collection of parts. You are the pattern that emerges when all those parts talk to one another. This is why even a small disruption, a blow to the head, a deep sleep, a burst of anesthesia, can dim the light. The communication breaks down and the network loses its coherence. The mind doesn't vanish, it simply stops integrating. When the flow resumes, the light returns, and you wake, blinking, into the story again. And what a story it is, because awareness does not merely observe, it also shapes. The information in your brain isn't static. It's constantly reweaving itself based on what you notice, what you feel, what you learn. Each thought reshapes the circuitry, strengthening one connection, softening another. Every moment of attention leaves a trace, a gentle sculpting of the network. The candle burns, and in doing so, it changes the wax that holds it. This too connects back to physics. Earlier we spoke of John Wheeler's idea that the universe is made of information, it from bit. If matter is information in motion, and consciousness is integrated information, then the two are reflections of the same process, the cosmos organizing itself into understanding. Reality, in this view, doesn't just exist, it knows it exists, at least in part. It's a humbling thought that awareness might not belong solely to humans or even to life. The universe could be quietly conscious in its own way, feeling its own patterns through the networks of galaxies and stars, the same way a brain feels its own thoughts. We can't know for sure, but the symmetry is alluring. Matter reaches for complexity, and out of that complexity, self-recognition arises. Still, consciousness remains the most intimate of mysteries. We can describe its mechanisms, chart its correlates, even predict its absence or return. But the feeling of it, the warmth of being, the soft edge of thought, can only be lived from the inside. No theory captures the taste of experience. Science can explain how the candle burns, but not what it's like to stand in its light. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the mystery isn't something to solve, but something to share. Every time you listen to music, read a line of poetry, or gaze at a sunset, you're participating in the universe's self-awareness. Two patterns of information recognizing each other. You're the candle and the flame, the cathedral and the light it holds. So tonight, as you rest, remember this simple truth. You don't need to find consciousness. You are consciousness, the light by which the world becomes visible, the pattern that feels itself alive. Perhaps reality and awareness are not two different things at all, but one continuous act of reflection. The cosmos dreaming, and through that dream discovering that it can see. When you open your eyes in the morning, the world seems already there, solid, familiar, waiting. The walls hold their shape, the sky holds its colour, and everything hums with quiet certainty. But if perception is a personal construction, a kind of private dream made of the brain's best guesses, then why do we all seem to wake into the same one? The answer, gentle and profound, is that reality is not just built inside one mind, it's built between minds. We don't live in isolated hallucinations, we live in overlapping ones, stitched together by language, culture, and trust. What we call the real world is the shared overlap, a place where enough of our personal illusions agree to let us live together. Think about a simple conversation. When you point to a table and say brown, the person beside you nods. You can't see through their eyes, but you both agree on the word. The table's colour, the texture of its wood, the meaning of its shape. All of these are translations confirmed by mutual consent. If someone insisted the table was glowing green when it clearly wasn't, we'd call it imagination or madness. But in truth, we're all imagining. We've just agreed on how the illusion should look. Language is the great synchronizer. It turns private experiences into public ones. When you tell someone you feel cold, they might hand you a blanket. They don't feel your chill, but they trust your description enough to act. Over time, words weave a web between minds, aligning perceptions just enough to build families, cities, civilizations. Without that web, there would be no shared world, only countless private ones, spinning silently apart. Culture deepens this illusion. We inherit shared meanings for colours, sounds, even emotions. In some cultures, white means purity. In others, it means mourning. The same shade, the same photons striking eyes, but entirely different stories attached. Each community builds a slightly different version of the universe, a collective dream sculpted by generations. Even time itself is culturally shaped. Some languages arrange the future in front and the past behind. Others see the past as something we face, visible and known, while the future approaches from behind, unseen. Neither view is more correct. They're simply different ways of organizing experience, different agreements on how to walk through the illusion. Consider laughter. It's one of the purest examples of shared perception. Something happens, a sound, a phrase, a look, and suddenly, many brains respond in unison. Laughter is a synchronization of prediction and surprise. It's the moment our minds agree. Yes, that wasn't what we expected, and it delights us. In that instant, separate consciousnesses beat as one. Music does this too. When a group of people sing together, their breathing aligns, their hearts subtly synchronize. The melody becomes a shared emotion, a hallucination so unified that it feels like truth. A single song can make thousands of people sway, as if controlled by one invisible rhythm. That is the power of collective perception. But sometimes our agreements diverge. History shows us that entire societies can fall under shared illusions that later unravel. Ideas once held as certain revealed as partial, biased, or false. The earth was once thought flat, the heavens immutable, the atom indivisible. Consensus, it turns out, is not the same as truth. Our collective hallucination can evolve, just as our personal ones do. That evolution is what we call progress, the gradual refinement of our shared model of reality. Science itself is a method for aligning hallucinations more precisely. Each experiment is a conversation. This is what I see. Do you see it too? When enough minds agree, a new layer of the world solidifies. But not all illusions are meant to dissolve. Some, like kindness or beauty, persist because they help us live. You can't measure love with an instrument, yet its presence is real in the same way gravity is, through its effects. We believe in it together, and by doing so, we make it tangible. Our social world is built on such agreements: money, laws, nations, relationships. These are not physical things. They exist only because minds believe in them. A dollar has no value outside the story we share about it. Marriage is not a law of nature, but a ritual of meaning. Identity, belonging, even morality. All collective fictions that hold the structure of human life together. Yet fiction doesn't mean false, it means made. The table is made of atoms, and so is trust. Both are forms of structure, one physical, the other psychological. The difference is that the first obeys gravity, and the second obeys agreement. You could say we live in a consensus reality, a dream so consistent that it feels objective. When enough people see the same mirage, it becomes the desert's truth. And this shared mirage is not a flaw. It's a kind of grace. It lets billions of separate consciousnesses cooperate, love, build, and grieve together. Without it, there would be no we. Perhaps that's what empathy truly is, the ability to visit someone else's hallucination for a while. When you listen deeply, you let their version of reality blend with yours. The edges blur, and understanding grows. You might not see exactly what they see, but you sense how their world feels. That too is a form of shared seeing, the alignment of inner landscapes. Our greatest human achievements depend on this fragile overlap. Every bridge, every story, every piece of art is a meeting place between private minds. You can look at a painting centuries old and still feel what the artist felt, their illusion reaching through time to touch yours. Maybe this is why dreams fascinate us. In dreams, the personal illusion is unbound, vivid, irrational. When you wake, you return to the collective dream, the one we've all agreed to call real. Both are constructions. The difference is how many people are sharing them at once. If reality is a shared hallucination, then communication is the art of tuning those hallucinations together. Every word, gesture, and glance is a calibration. We adjust each other's worlds until they harmonize just enough to coexist. And sometimes the harmony is so perfect that we forget it's an illusion at all. Two people look at the same sunset and fall silent, feeling the same awe. Billions wake beneath the same sky and call it morning. The overlap becomes complete. For a while, the shared dream feels like truth, and maybe, in that moment, it is. We live then in overlapping illusions, fragile but beautiful. They are the fabric of community, the heartbeat of understanding. And though they're woven from perception and belief, they hold as strongly as any law of physics. Perhaps that's the quiet genius of the mind. It takes the private art of hallucination and turns it into a collective masterpiece, a world we can share. We began with an apple, ordinary, solid, resting in a pool of light. We peeled it back through atoms and waves, fields and probabilities, until matter dissolved into music and meaning. We followed that melody through the brain, where perception became prediction and prediction became experience. And now, standing at the end of our journey, we look around and realize something quietly astonishing. For all we've learned, the mystery hasn't diminished. It's grown. Science has carried us far. It has shown that space and time bend, that particles behave like whispers, that reality dances between possibility and fact. It has revealed that consciousness builds the world we see, and that the world itself might be a grand exchange of information, a conversation between what exists and what perceives. But even at its most precise, knowledge always leaves a soft glow around the edges, a question that refuses to fade. Maybe that's because mystery isn't a flaw in understanding. It's part of what makes understanding possible. It's the space that allows wonder to breathe. Reality, when you look at it closely enough, seems to fold in on itself, the outer and inner meeting somewhere in the middle. The physicist studying galaxies and the poet watching rain on a window are both searching for the same thing: connection. One looks outward through telescopes, the other inward through language. Both are trying to describe a pattern too large to hold, and too beautiful to end. Perhaps that's what truth really is. Not a final equation, but a relationship. Something that exists only in the act of noticing. The universe, after all, may be vast beyond measure, but it only becomes meaningful when seen, when felt, when lived. Meaning is not discovered like treasure. It's created moment by moment between mind and world. Think of all the threads we've followed, the physics of light, the curves of gravity, the probabilities of quantum fields, the brain's quiet art of hallucination, evolution's playful illusions, the shared dreams of humanity. Each one seemed separate, but in the end they circle back to the same point. Reality is both out there and in here. And perhaps those are not two places, but one continuous breath. When you inhale, molecules that were once part of stars fill your lungs. When you exhale, part of you returns to the air, where it will someday join another breath. The boundary between self and universe is porous, constantly crossed. Consciousness doesn't sit inside you, it passes through you, as life passes through every living thing. You're not looking at reality, you're participating in it. This makes humility feel less like surrender and more like belonging. You're not small against the scale of the cosmos. You are the cosmos arranged for a time into thought. The same laws that shape galaxies shape the rhythm of your heart. The same patterns that govern light govern the way you dream. The universe is not above you or beneath you. It is within you, unfolding at the pace of your awareness. We spend our lives chasing certainty, the perfect formula, the perfect answer, the moment when the puzzle finally clicks, but certainty is only one kind of peace. There's another kind, the peace that comes from embracing mystery, the peace that says it's enough to wonder. Look at how the night sky humbles and comforts us at once. The stars don't explain themselves, they simply exist, brilliant, silent, patient. Their light travels for millions of years, crossing cold and emptiness to reach your eyes. And in that instant, you and the stars are connected by a single photon, a single ancient message of light. You're seeing the past and the present at once, time folded into vision. Maybe that's what consciousness is for, to be the bridge where matter and meaning meet, where the universe can taste its own existence. You are the universe aware of its reflection, a brief alignment of atoms that has learned to say, I am. And in that awareness lies something sacred, not religious, Not mystical in the old sense, but quietly holy in its simplicity. The holiness of being, the holiness of asking, the holiness of not knowing, and yet still being moved by the question. We call that feeling wonder, and it is the oldest part of science. Older than equations, older than telescopes, older even than language. It's the same feeling that made our ancestors look up at the night sky and whisper stories into the dark. It's what made Newton watch an apple fall and think of the moon. It's what makes you, right now, curious about what lies beyond what you can see. Perhaps wonder is the universe's way of keeping itself awake, an internal echo reminding it that existence is still unfolding. When you feel wonder, you're fulfilling your role as its observer and its participant, its dreamer and its dream. So, when you wake tomorrow and light returns to your room, look around slowly. Notice how every object, every shadow, every colour has a story that began long before you. The table you touch is made of stardust. The air you breathe carries the exhalations of forests. The warmth on your skin was born inside the sun. The reality you wake into is ancient, yet always new, recreated by your senses each morning, freshly painted by consciousness. And if for a moment it feels too big to hold, the thought of all this vastness, all this interconnection, let that feeling settle gently. You don't have to solve the universe. You're already part of its solution. The fact that you can listen, feel, and wonder means the cosmos has achieved something remarkable. It has learned to care about itself. Every equation, every question, every story we tell is just another way of tracing that care, of translating infinity into understanding. The mystery remains not as a riddle to be conquered, but as a song that continues softly, even after you stop listening. So let the mind rest. Let the world blur for a while. You don't need to hold all the answers. The candle is still burning. The stars are still shining. The universe is still speaking, quietly, in every breath you take. And tonight, as the sound fades and your thoughts grow lighter, may you feel that quiet conversation between self and cosmos, the endless exchange between what is known and what is possible. Because the world you see tomorrow morning will not be false. It will simply be your mind's best poem about what's true. Sleep peacefully, wherever and whenever you may be.